Israel officially has a date for their ground invasion into Gaza. Now, in this video, we are going to go over what the Prime Minister said is the objective for Israel. However, this war has already caused massive consequences for the US military in the Middle East, and things are only getting worse. So let's go ahead and dig into this. Okay, so like I said, the Prime Minister of Israel has stated that the ground invasion is ready to go. Now, when we actually go and see what his words are, we can sort of dig into what the objectives are and what Israel is actually trying to achieve. You can see here, we have already taken out thousands of T words, and this is only the beginning. Sorry I have to say the T words, you guys can read the script. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion, which means he's talking about the air campaign and the ground invasion coming together. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many. I will also not elaborate on the various calculations we are making, we'll get to that in a second, which the public is mostly unaware of, and that is how things should be. Now, look, if you expected for Israel to actually release the date of their invasion like it's some sort of mixtape, they're not going to do that. However, Israel has been extremely transparent on the rest of their missions and objectives. Now, the goal set by the Prime Minister is, of course, destroy Hamas and to rescue the hostages. Now, of course, you know they want to destroy Hamas and rescue hostages, but understand this. Look at what order the objectives are. I think there's been a lot of misconception on what the actual goal is for Israel, because the media is saying, well, we have hostages, and Hamas, they're releasing some of the hostages. Yes, the hostages are important, but they are secondary to the main objective, again, destroying Hamas. Israel is also very skeptical onto the condition of the rest of the hostages that Hamas has, because again, whatever Hamas is saying, Israel is not trusting anything until they see it. Something else that's extremely interesting, and you don't see this a lot with political leaders around the world, is that he's sort of taken responsibility, or is willing to take some responsibility for the country not being secured and getting attacked initially. You can even see down here, the scandal will be fully investigated, he said. Everyone will have to give answers, me too. But all this will happen only after the war. This is in context to a lot of people in Israel. There's still a lot of divide and a lot of blame on the Prime Minister for this matter. I'm not here to sway you either way. I'm just trying to report the facts. But a lot of Israelis are blaming the Prime Minister for the lack of security, and a lot of the world was questioning Israel. You live next to a territory that you call your enemy, and all of a sudden you're surprised that you got attacked. And so it's rather interesting that the Prime Minister is willing to be investigated, but again, only after the war. I mean, that caveat is so gray area. Who knows how long this war will last? Okay, so that's pretty much it on the Prime Minister. Now, as far as speculating as to what Israel is calculating for beyond Gaza, the biggest speculation is this. The U.S. is sending additional air defense systems to the Middle East. Now, this has been totally confirmed. The Pentagon even said that they are sending more air defense assets to protect U.S. interests in the Middle East as well. Because you have to understand this. There's been over 20 plus soldiers that have been injured, and there are more and more factions who are coming up out of nowhere, and there's more and more factions who are attacking U.S. troops and Israeli troops. So again, the U.S. wants to be prepared, and Israel wants to make sure that all of their flanks are secured if they're going to go all in on Gaza. The other massive calculation that everyone knows Israel is trying to figure out is, of course, the tunnel system. Now, we all talk about the tunnel systems under Gaza, but we never talk about the tunnel systems under Israel. Understand this, Israeli Defense Forces just released a statement saying, we have caught Hamas fighters coming out of a tunnel system into Israeli territory. Now, they were squashed and they destroyed the portal of the tunnel, but you never know how much that tunnel can now spiderweb out into Israel as well. There might be more portals of entry or exit. Okay, so Israel, to combat the threat of a counter flank from Gaza into Israel, they did what's called evacuating the combat zones, because Israel is well aware and they know it's going to happen. It's already happened. They are probably going to get a counterattack the second they go into Gaza. Who knows how many tunnels are going into Israel, because Israel doesn't even know. And if you've ever taken the time to actually look at some of the maps, which Israel has released the map systems, you can see they overlap throughout all of Gaza. So even if you take out significant parts of a tunnel, there's still many more portions of the tunnel that can be used under Gaza. The number that I saw is that there's over 300 miles of tunnel system. That was back in 2021, so who knows how many more tunnels there are now. Speaking of collateral damage, the U.S. military is well aware there is a massive threat right now in the Middle East, not only for the U.S. military, but for all things United States. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is preparing for the worst case scenario. You have the White House quite literally asking the Pentagon, we need you to prepare for worst case scenario. What your objectives are, prepare for evacuating hundreds of thousands of U.S. civilians, and prepare for another conflict to brew up against the United States. This guy right here went from kind of worrying about the Middle East to now everyone is paying attention to the Middle East. Now, when you hear worst case scenario, I know we all go to World War III. We are not at that point yet. The U.S. military has always had a threat in the Middle East. So don't take this as like, that's it, it's all over, pack your bags, say goodbye. What's happening is, again, these are scenarios and combat situations where there needs to be preparation. Again, which country are we going to choose if we do evacuate out of the Middle East? Because it's not going to be Afghanistan. Now, again, you have the statistics coming out of how many troops have been injured from Iraq and Syria. Now, Syria is facing a lot of contention because Syria is the front line where factions want to get to Israel. However, you have U.S. assets and Israeli assets who are still pounding enemy forces in Syria. Something else I always like to point out to you guys, the audience, is that we've always been in the Middle East, but now we have further escalation. Syria is a very interesting case study because Syria is complicated. We're fighting against the Russians, Hezbollah, other entities who don't like the U.S. But now that the U.S. is tied to Israel, it makes even more sense as to why the United States is facing more of a threat within Syria. Specifically down here at Al Tanf base, it's on the border regions of Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. Al Tanf base is sort of the secure point for U.S. forces to try stopping anyone from going into Jordan, trying to get into the West Bank, and trying to get as close as possible over into Israel. So Al Tanf base has seen most of the pressure and most of the attacks on troops. So what exactly does this all mean for the U.S. military? This is the biggest question. Are we going to war? Are we getting involved with Israel's war? Yes, yes, and no, and no. No matter what, the United States has always stated from day one that Israel has the right to defend themselves and that the United States stands with Israel. Now, the implications of this from the outside world or the enemies of Israel and the United States, well, that means, United States, you are embedded in this war, and no matter what, you are a primary target as well as Israel. And this is why we are seeing more and more factions who are coming back out of nowhere, from their caves, if you will. You have bases in Kuwait who are now under threat. The embassy in Kuwait now has limited actions in the region because of the threat that's going on for U.S. troops. You have another faction that no one's ever heard of, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, who, again, never heard of them. No one's ever heard of them. The CIA's never heard of them, but they are popping up and making public statements that we are here to fight. We're going to end with this point. There's also another major underlying issue that Israel has been facing, and the whole world, they know about it, but no one's really talking about it, is that Lebanon, to the north, Israel is facing a lot of casualties to the north. You have tanker units who are getting attacked with anti-tank weapons, and they're getting attacked from Hezbollah over on the Lebanese border. And again, because of this, Israel fires back. They hurt civilians. They cause more drama. But again, this is becoming more and more of an issue for Israel. So when Israel talks about all of these calculations, they're talking about the north as well and how they're going to handle that if they want to get into Gaza. Now, Hezbollah never formally said that they are now in the war with Israel. However, they have formally stated that they hate Israel, as well as the French, as well as the United States. I didn't mean to laugh at the French, but they always get hated on by everybody. Nonetheless, Hezbollah is determined to do what they need to do to distract Israel. They've already come out on their local news station stating, our main objective is to distract. We will send all the drones in the world. We'll send all the rockets. As long as Israel looks this way and they can get counterflanked that way, we did our job. Now, there's no indication that Hezbollah is amassing some sort of attack from the north. However, they're doing quite a good job at distracting Israel again and actually creating casualties, which is a big problem for Israel. Now, if this invasion does happen, again, Israel says it's going to happen. We'll see if it actually does. The thing to really look out for is the issues of the tunnel system. The son of one of the co-founders of Hamas has come out publicly and said no military in the world, from the United States even to Israel, is prepared for what's ahead of them with this tunnel system. He even suggested to use gas to take out the fighters in the tunnels, because you're not able to destroy all these tunnels. Something else to also look out for is that these tunnels can be used against the troops, as in all of these tunnels could be rigged to be taken out, if you catch my drift. So Israel, again, a lot of these soldiers are going to be on a one-way mission. This is going to be a very problematic conflict. We still have a massive humanitarian issue. You have a lot of allies to Israel who are also questioning, is it worth you taking out one target and taking out 300 civilians? Is that worth it, Israel? We got to be a little critical here and look at both sides. Nonetheless, Israel is justifying their air campaign. They're justifying their invasion. They're saying Hamas started it with their initial attack. In many ways, that's true. But in some ways, I don't even think the U.S. military would do some of the things Israel is doing. I mean, they are quite literally willing to take out one target, and there's many other casualties around. Now, I know it's a lot deeper than that, but I'm just calling it out as it is. So again, we'll see what happens. The prime minister is saying there will be an invasion. The invasion is set to go. But there's a lot of outside pressures and, again, calculations that need to come together. This is going to be a very painful war. Gaza is tiny, but it's very condensed. And beyond the fact of attacking Hamas, you also have to save the civilians of Gaza. This is in the rules of war, and this is the moral thing to do if you're going to try and wiping an entire area of bad guys, because these bad guys already use civilians as meat shields. Nonetheless, it does look like Israel, they're sort of being watched by everyone. The United States has actually been very critical of Israel. We will only support you if you follow the rules of war and if you allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. So we'll see if Israel sticks to their word, but the whole world will be watching this war if it does go down. The ground invasion is what I'm talking about. If I'm being honest with you, I think I want it to all end, because this is going to be extremely destructive. But Israel has already said it's set, it's time to go, and we're going to do it.